Neely case in terms of the subway system. And the reason why I think that's important is the narrative that's going on around who he was as the individual, as a person. If most people don't even realize this month is mental health month, right? Most people don't even understand. Last month was dealing with stress. And we see that this person, Mr. Neely, experienced mental health issues for a continuous period of time, yet he didn't receive any help. Yeah, and it frustrates me in a sense because we're looking at the city of New York, which is spending about $5 million a day to take care of immigrants, but we're not even doing the basic thing that we say, which is I am my brother's keeper. Mr. Neely was our brother, and he died a violent death and an unnecessary death, because if they had taken those funds that we're spending to take care of other people and put it toward our brother, because 53% of the people that's in the homeless system are Black and Latino. If we would have taken that money and allocated it to other resources, we would have had him off the streets. He would have been getting the necessary care he needed. But I mean, I've already given my opinion. I want to ask you, brothers, what did y'all think about the whole situation pertaining to his death?
I think this is a tragedy all the way around. I don't think Mr. Neely should have lost his life. I think the chokehold that was put on him was held on him way too long. I mean, he could have let him go. I think the other two people that we seen in the video that were part of the subduing of him could have figured out another method, or should have been paying attention to the chokehold. 15, I don't know if it was exactly 15 minutes or not, but that is a long time to keep somebody on the hold. I don't know what happened before the video, but unfortunately we know how the situation ended and he lost his life. I think that there could have been other measures that took place that could have saved his life. But there is several different questions here that need to be answered, and a lot of different dialogue. One, how homeless folks, not just in New York, but all across this nation, are dealt with. And not just homeless folks, let's be very specific, Black men. Because most homeless folks are Black men, which we don't talk about and we don't really give a dang about, is Black men. And the needs of Black men, and what happens when Black men do fall through the cracks, whether it's a mental health system, a social system, etc., how we end up on our own, homeless, injured. A lot of homeless men have injuries and health issues and all types of concerns. It's not just the mental health, it's the physical as well. So, and we can see just from the video, this man was not the most nourished man. He was very thin. From one of the stills of the video of him being choked, he looked like he was going through a lot, and we should be paying attention to that. So that's one thing. We can blame all the systems, but at the end of the day, this always gets back down to family dynamics. I feel like I talk about that every time I come on the show. It's family structure. This man had a pretty traumatic upbringing. I don't remember if it was a stepfather or his actual biological father, but his mother got choked and passed away from being choked to death. And being a young person in systems after that, and seeing and knowing what happened, that leaves a lot of trauma there. So there's a lot to be talked about. I'm gonna leave some meat on the bone for my brother here. I don't want to take up too much of the time, but it's important for us to not just see this as a white supremacy incident, because I don't know if this white man really did this because he was a Black man. I think they subdued him and he went overdrive, and this is what we're seeing. But one more thing that I want to say, and then I'll pass the mic. This also brings up the question of what do we do with all the chaos that is happening in society? Citizens are going to start stepping in and defending themselves when things happen. I've heard a lot of accounts that Mr. Neely was being aggressive. He was he was coming at people. And citizens are going to protect themselves. This goes back to some other conversations we've had on previous episodes about carjackings and home invasions and stuff. People are going to start utilizing force to protect themselves in these situations. At some point, we have to address the chaos and say enough is enough.
Agreed. Well said. What I will say is, one, when it comes to mental health, I've always been on the fence about it. And when I say I've been on the fence about it, I think that there are people who mentally they're off kilter. Something there's something in their brain. There's something that, quote unquote, and I'm gonna do air quotes for this, that isn't right, that doesn't allow them to function in the parameters of everyday society. And then I think that there's trauma, right? That there's this trauma that we've gone through in life that then ultimately affects our brains, right? And our behavior. And I like it to, it's like a baby, it's like a baby that's born and their parent was addicted to crack, right? That child then grows up, and if you've ever seen a child whose mother was addicted to crack, loud noises and things like that, and the way they function, right, doesn't really allow them to integrate into what we would consider the normal society. I say that to say that I honestly don't think we are equipped to handle or help those people, right? And I say that in the sense that it's almost like we don't know what to do, right? Because if you're going to help me, you need my consent. If I can't consent for you to help me, then how can you help me, right? If we're using Mr. Neely, an example, were we to grab him and drag him against his will if he didn't want to go and like put him in a room? Was that going to be helpful? Allowing the drug industry to dope him up, would that have been helpful? Like, those kind of things, or in a rare case, lock him up against his will. So I think we really need to come up with, what do we do? That's one. Two, I've been in that situation. I've been on the train. High school, middle school, college, as an adult, just riding back and forth on the train. I have seen it all, as most New Yorkers have, right? Everything from people performing to homeless people, or people that we perceive to be homeless, to taking other people's food, to I've been on the train where somebody had a knife in his back and he was getting ready to stab somebody. And I'm like, you're not trying to jump in, but like snapping my fingers, talking to the guy like, hey, you're literally about to stab him on a crowded train. Like, you literally are going to kill this person in front of all these witnesses, right? But I will say this. I've been in this exact situation before, right? And as law-abiding citizens, you are then stuck with, you have people who literally freeze, that fight or flight. They don't know what to do when they encounter someone who's aggressive. You have your fighters, like in this case, where somebody actually stood up for not only themselves, but for other people around them, right? And what do? Right? You have this dichotomy of, I'm a New Yorker. If you start getting aggressive and there's nothing in your hands, I'm not going to let you reach in your pocket. You reach in your pocket, I'm on you, right? At the same time, then you have to assess the situation. I think in this situation, when the gentleman grabs him and chokes him, and if you are familiar with MMA, it's a RNC, it's called a rear naked choke, and it looked like, it appeared that he had his leg wrapped around him, so you have his hooks in to make sure that he can't get away, right? And he's applying an enormous amount of pressure. So you already have him subdued and other people around him. So then it begs the question of, do I ease up or do I keep the pressure? I didn't know it was 15 minutes. 15 minutes is a long time, but in the heat of the action, you're not looking at a watch, right? And you're thinking about your safety, because once you put somebody in a chokehold, you have to finish the job. And I'm not saying that you kill them, but you have to make sure that you don't let them up because they're on top of you, right? And so it's a very fine line. And like you said, it's a tragic incident. And the last thing I'll say is this: it's a tragic incident, and one, this is going to cause, if he is actually prosecuted, this is going to cause people to then, and politicians are going to take this and run with it. I just want to be very clear with that.
Absolutely.
They're going to take this and run with it, and they're going to say, you're penalizing citizens for defending themselves. That's going to be the narrative that comes out of this, right? If he's actually arrested and convicted, then you're going to have the other side that says, people are going to say, well, you don't care about us as Black people. And I think we need to look at this one. I'm not going to say holistically, but we need to look at this one for the incident that it is and isolate it. This was an incident of somebody on the train that was perceived by others as being aggressive, and potentially harmful, and a citizen subduing him, and then in the process of subduing him, killing him, right? And we really need to look at it like that. But I don't think we have a definitive answer about what we can do about people who have struggled with mental health issues, where we can put them, and or do we need a community of people to come around and show them love? Like, I don't think we have an answer for that.
So let me jump in here and kind of give you a little bit of perspective from someone a little bit older and who's seen some things. Well, let's just talk about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we have this perception of what it is to be black in America and black as a threat. And so therefore, I mean, if he walked into a theater, if Mr. Neely walked into a theater and he screamed out fire, then there would be some hurt or harm. But if he's having a mental episode, then this should have, I'm not saying people are professional enough to recognize that, but obviously you can see when someone is in crisis. And if he didn't physically touch anybody, where does it give you a right for you to physically put your hand on any individual? And that is the problem, because we wasn't on the train. So I can't see what happened, as you brothers pointed out, what happened previously. But I've worked with the homeless. I went out at night and fed the homeless. I walked in parks and brought them clothes and food and sat and talked with a lot of these people. And guess what I know? A lot of the people that were out in the street that were homeless in New York City, a lot of them were experiencing mental health crisis issues. And so therefore, this is what we did. We closed all of the hospitals. We closed all of these different places, facilities, and we put them into the street. And then we say, well, good luck to you, and we don't care. So my problem is this in terms of the narrative. When George Zimmerman was able to kill Trayvon Martin after he initiated the incident, because then this is the question pertaining to this, right? We allowed that to happen. America allowed it to happen. So people are desensitized to the death of black men, is my point. We saw that with Chauvin, right? We're seeing that right here. This man got choked out. It was three people there, two people holding his hands. It should have stopped at a particular point, but it didn't stop. And so again, I ride the trains also. I get what you're saying, right? And but that there's also some part of me that has some type of empathy for individuals that are homeless. And that I didn't make myself into the judge and jury, right? What's the philosophy? I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
Yeah.
So that's the mentality. And so now you seeing. So what are we turning into? A lawless state? Is this anarchy in America? I'm just saying to you that I think that the narrative, that the way we always respond to everything individually or as a community is violence, is a problem for me. There's a narrative where there is no compassion, there is no empathy toward individuals. And I'm saying that within this society, black men specifically have lost that empathy impact in terms of who they are because of the narratives that are out there that we allow to be perpetrated about us.
I agree with you 100%. And the only thing I would add to it is, again, I think that's the medium we're trying to find, right? And when I say the medium, I literally mean the medium, because for someone who wakes up, has a job, owns a business, whatever the case may be, whether you have a family or not, totally irrelevant. For someone who wakes up, leaves the house, and wants to come back home safely, right?
Yes.
In rush hour in New York City, you have 9 million plus people taking the train back and forth. When you're on the train, people got the headphones in, they're reading books, reading magazines. Some people are writing rhymes, people are doing homework, people are filling out spreadsheets. There's a litany of things that goes on. Hell, you might even see a famous actor on the train with a cup of coffee, right? Rapper shooting a video, people perform. There's so much going on the train. And the question remains, you are absolutely right. As far as we know, he didn't hurt anybody. He didn't touch anybody. Some people say he was being loud and aggressive, but then the question becomes, at what point do you, as you're measuring, at what do I have to allow someone to put their hands on me in order for me to, and this is me growing up in New York City. This is me growing up in the streets of New York. This is me saying, and I think this goes for any neighborhood, anywhere. We all have personal spaces and bubbles. And at a certain point, when you're kind of engaging with somebody, you have to be able to determine, like, is this person a threat? And if they are a threat, how credible is this threat and what damage can be done? Because at the end of the day, you know, you want to go home, whether it's to your family, to your dog, or just for yourself. And I think that's the tough part here.
What I think is disingenuous with the media, and then Brandon, I want you to jump in here, is that they keep asking about the mental state of Mr. Neely, but not about the passengers on the train. Because the mental state of the passengers on the train triggered the event also. It had something to do with how they responded to him on the train. And no one is asking that question. And I find that wrong. I find that disingenuous. I'm not excusing his behavior, right? But again, we can always find excuses for people's behavior when we want to, when we see that person as human, as part of the human family. So this is the question I'm asking. Why isn't their mindset being questioned? What did they see when they saw this man on the train that they thought he was a threat? Besides the emotional outburst, because again, everybody could tell that he was having an emotional outburst in this particular situation. But I don't want to put you on the spot. We just having a conversation.
I'm gonna weave both of your points together and answer the question, and I'm gonna attempt to do this. Now, your question is great because you're bringing up a holistic view of the entire situation. Everybody is under distress at this point. If you ride Metro Transit, if you ride any substation, any main urban bus or train, you are entering into a toxic stress environment because you have people who are unmedicated, overdosing on medication, all different type of traumas, all different type of life perspectives, all different type of threat levels in one secluded place and traveling in a very dangerous medium. I mean, a train can be very dangerous. So everybody's on hyper alert. Everybody's amygdala is activated. Everybody's limbic system is in this like protective mode. And then when something happens that brings that awareness a little bit from threat level from, yellow to orange, stuff's gonna happen. And in New York, I've never been to New York. I'll admit that I've never been to New York. I need to get there and see it for myself. But from what I hear, people are a little bit more, aggressive in your face. They're a little bit more. They'll let you know about yourself a little bit. And when if you take just the culture of if you're an average New Yorker and you put them in this threat level situation, like riding a subway, where we hear people being pushed into subway tracks, people being robbed, all types of stuff happening, you get one individual who activates that. And then people kick into gear. It wasn't just that one white dude who put him in a chokehold. There were several people subduing him. So something took place. Something happened. And we have to keep in mind, we're all desensitized to black men being killed. Even to the point where if this was not a white man that choked him out, we wouldn't even know about this incident. I promise you, we would not know about this. If this was a black dude who choked him out, it would have just been another black dude choked out on the subway. You don't think some black dude hasn't been choked out on a subway before? I mean, some of you probably have seen people get choked out on the subway. They might not have died, or somebody might have lost a limb or got stabbed. We don't hear about none of that stuff. He's not the first person to die in a New York subway station. But since it was a white man, it fits a political narrative, and now it becomes a problem. So this is how I'm going to tie in the point that Paul was making. There's two narratives that are at play here, and both narratives dehumanize the black man. The liberal narrative, which is I'm going to show how white supremacy is super bad and how the white man and the patriarchy needs to be pulled down because this was a white perpetrator who decided to take legal action and become the police and kill a black man. That's one narrative, right? Still dehumanizing the black man because we're just a figure for political jargon and political process. And then you have the more conservative, which I'm going to say more of a Republican talking point, which is here we go again. Here go the liberals, and here goes the racial narrative. Another black man down, but look at all the things that he's done. And yes, he's done a lot of things. That man was arrested over 40 times in like the past 3 years in the subway station. Right. So there's truth to that, but it still dehumanizes his condition. What was going on? Why was he even in this strait to begin with? There has to be some fit in the middle to understand the context of this situation. And we miss that. And the reason why we miss it is because for both ends of the spectrum, black men's dehumanization is just a political football and a tool to progress down the field for both parties.